Alright, so as you guys know, we recently just had a skill ban list, and a very important skill ban list to that one, because of course we had a very big issue currently, which was Tachyon just deleting every single deck from existence that wasn't named Shiranui. So thankfully, the ban list is going to come into play soon, and it's going to take Tachyon and just remove it from the game entirely, almost making it completely and utterly unplayable, and we'll talk about that when I review it on the actual tier list here, but essentially, the rest of the meta is now actually playable again, meaning we're going to have a drastic meta shift once this new ban list comes into place. So I thought, what better time to do a tier list video covering where I think the meta is going to be once everything's settled down and this new ban list has come into place. Alright, so before we jump into this tier list, just a reminder, if you guys enjoy this kind of content, these tier list videos, and just videos from me in general, please remember to leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel down below. I'm getting pretty close to 100k right now and very close to 93k, so if you want to sub and all that kind of stuff, would very much appreciate the support. And yeah, let's jump into this tier list. So, a little bit of context, Tachyon, like I said, we haven't had any tourney results for Tachyon since the skill changes, because obviously we can't realistically replicate the skill changes for this one, so it's hard to sort of review this deck list to see if it's going to be playable anymore or not. But from my personal thoughts and just reading the text and just talking to other people, just looking at it, I think this deck is going to be really bad now. At least not a top tier deck. It's probably going to be playable in a sense, but I think that's about it. It's just had too much removed from it. The fact that it's no longer once per turn, or it's once per duel now, not once per turn, is already a really drastic change. But then it has all that other stuff on top of it. You can't summon a thing to the field anymore. You can't have the trap card in hand, so it can be MST'd, and all the other random changes. IDP can't be played in it anymore. I just don't think it's going to be a top tier deck anymore. I think it's only going to be playable. I don't even think it's like a rogue level deck list. I wouldn't be surprised if someone topped an event with it or something, but it definitely won't do it even remotely consistently, so I think it's only going to be playable, which means the entire format has been completely freed and everything is playable again. Because then we're going to talk about Shiranui next, because this is a very important one to talk about, because a lot of people are going to be surprised where I put this. This deck list, despite what it's currently at, where it's sort of a tier 1 deck on par with Tachyon, this deck was only considered a tier 1 deck because it was the only deck that could compete with Tachyon just based on matchup wise. The actual deck itself isn't actually a tier 1 level deck. It is going to be probably tier 2. And if you want to see some actual results for this, because I feel like I have to show some, because otherwise people are going to be like, bullshit, this guy's talking out his ass. This is like a tier 0 deck. It's going to be taking over the format, which is what my comment section seems to think. That's not actually the case whatsoever. The only reason it was considered tier 1 is because it was the only deck that could match up into Tachyon, not necessarily as a power level, just because of the matchup, just how the matchup worked. So if we look at some tournament results recently, we had a big one yesterday where there was 100 and something people were playing. Shiranui was the most played deck at 18, and then when it got to top cut, only one of them made it. This does not look like a tier 0 deck list to me. And if we look at some of the other results, so we just click on the tournament results of the last 7 days, since the ban list came into play in tournaments, you'll notice that there is not that many Shiranuis in here. There's actually barely any. To be fair, we haven't had that many tournaments yet, but having, 1, 2, 3? That's actually, no, sorry, only 2. Only 2 tournament results, and all these other ones are just topping quite easily. That's looking very much like Shiranui. It's not the tier 1, tier 0 deck you might think it is. It's just a deck that was doing really well into Tachyon, but now that Tachyon's gone, it doesn't have that insane matchup anymore. It's just going to have a much harder time against everything else. Not going to be a bad deck by any means, but it's no longer going to be a top 1 best deck in the format sort of a deck. I think it's actually just a tier 2 deck. That's where I'm sitting on. Also, of course, the nerf of not being able to search spell and trap cards is pretty important. You can't search the annoying trap card that stops you taking damage for a turn, or the trap card that makes your things immune, or even search for the spell card that lets you get a special summon to play through Disruption. Those are all some pretty major changes, so all of that combined with Tachyon being gone, it's going to be a tier 2 deck. Which means the rest of the format is going to be very much freed up. Alright, so I've actually included a lot of deck lists today, because I wanted to make it so there was very in-depth tier list covering basically everything, so if I missed any deck lists on here, I can't cover everything in the game, so I try to cover most things though. Alright, I also added some extra tiers today to, yeah, make it so like it's very, just have more information available, I guess, based on my opinion. Alright, so now we have BLS. So BLS is a deck that I'm putting it on here mostly because the new Evil Eye addition to it. I think BLS by itself, didn't really change much, but Evil Eye being playable in it is certainly something. It makes the deck feel a lot better, but is it enough to make it like a top tier deck? I don't think so. I don't even think it's really a rogue level deck. I think in KC Cups it might be a rogue level deck, but if we're just talking like ladder gameplay or tournament gameplay, it's probably just a playable deck. Definitely not better now that Tachyon's gone, actually playable now, but I don't think it's any higher than that. But I wanted to include it on here anyway, just because, yeah, had some newish sort of stuff added in the Evil Eye stuff. Alright, Earth Machine. I think this is rogue. So Earth Machine, it was very close to tier 3 before the Tachyon stuff, but now that there's going to be Shiranui in the format as well, and just everything in general is just sort of a little bit stronger, I think it's probably only rogue, I think. It's very close to tier 3 Earth Machine. I think if more people played it, some more better players played it, like the absolute best players in the game were playing it, it could probably sneak its way into top tiers easily. But with not that much representation and not that many people on the deck and just in general, I just don't think it's just looking more of a rogue deck. I don't expect it to be topping too many tournaments in the near future, but I do expect it to be in there occasionally. So it's definitely a rogue sort of a deck. S-Force. So S-Force is actually tier 3. May even be higher if more people are playing it, but from what I've seen, S-Force has been doing very well. Even from the tournament yesterday, I think there was a couple of... There was 2 S-Force actually at the top of this one. So I think S-Force is actually doing surprisingly well. It's like one of the better trap decks in the format, if not the best one in the format currently. It feels really good. Just having so much recursion and being able to banish things is really strong, so... Yeah, I think it seems really good. It seems really good at the moment. Probably the best of the trap decks currently available, I think. Yeah, if I'm not forgetting any, I think it's probably the best of the trap decks available, making it at least tier 3. Kozmo. Ooh, Kozmo. Yeah, Kozmo's having it rough. Because there's a lot of non-target removal stuff right now. I just wanted to check something real quick. So I'm pretty sure the Mayakashi is a non-target send removal, right? It's been so long since I've played the deck, but I'm pretty sure it is. If this guy's special summoned, you can destroy... Oh no, it is destroy at least, so that would let them that would let it float. But yeah, the fact that it's still non-target removal is a bit annoying. And any other sort of non-target removal, so things like IDP and stuff, are really annoying for the deck. Even things like Warning Point can be pretty annoying. I mean, it's probably playable. I think calling it not good is probably a bit of a... bit rude to the deck list, because it's probably a playable deck, but I don't think it's No, I just don't think it's very good right now. I think it's just not good. There's too much non-target removal stuff just floating around the place, and because of that, it makes it so the deck that's designed around being immune to targeting stuff just isn't that great. I guess IDP doesn't really affect it that often, so I guess it has that going for it. Sometimes it affects it, sometimes it doesn't. I don't know. I just think there's too much that can deal with it right now. Alright, next up, we have Lunalight. This is a rogue level deck. So, Lunalight, before Tachyon was released, and we're just looking at the tournament results before the Tachyon stuff, Lunalight was popping up all over the place, just randomly, occasionally hitting top cuts. So, it may even be like a sleeper tier 3 deck, honestly. But now that we've had the Tachyon formats gone past, and with the newer format, I don't think there'll be enough people sort of playing it to warrant putting it in tier 3. But I don't actually sleep on this deck list. I think there's a lot of potential for it to actually be like a tier 3 sort of a deck. It just randomly just does well. So I'm going to put it in rogue for now, but I wouldn't be surprised if it just snuck its way up, because it had a decent amount of results before the Tachyon stuff came around. So yeah, I'm going to put it in rogue for now. Oh boy, Tenyi, my favorite deck list to make fun of on these reviews. So Tenyi, God, I still think Tenyi is incredibly overrated, but at the same time, can I keep ignoring it? Can I actually keep ignoring this deck? Okay, so it's either tier 1 or tier 2. It's either tier 1 or tier 2. From my personal experience playing against this thing and seeing it, to me it just feels like a not that great of a deck list, so I want to put it in tier 2. But if we look at just results currently, it's performing so well. We had like a Tenyi here. Sorry, where are we? Tenyi. All these Tenyis currently doing well. Almost as many as Mayakashi. We had a couple of Tenyis in here. We had 9 being played and 3 made top cut. Like, it's doing well, so it's hard to, like, ignore it. Is it good enough for tier 2, tier 1, though? I swear, this deck loses to so much, because its turn 1 is so bad. You're literally setting up a monster that can be hit by a single non-target removal source, and you are dead. You've got nothing left. Sometimes you have the Berserkion Synchro monster on the field, sometimes, but the cards in the graveyard... I just realized my alerts are on. Let me turn them off real quick. Yeah, the cards in the graveyard, they do absolutely nothing if a single non-target removal source hits your Link monster. And there's a lot available currently, so it's not like it's really not that hard to get rid of. Where's my alerts at? Let me turn them off. There you go. So, and I think if more people start taking towards Tenyi and graveyard decks again, I do think it'll be a lot harder for it to play. God, it's so hard for me to put this in tier 1, but oh my god, I think it might be a tier 1 deck. I'm going to leave it in tier 2 for now. Maybe I'll change my mind later on. But yeah, I don't think Tenyi's that great of a deck list, but I think everyone's still going to play it. It's going to have insane representation, even the most representation potentially, so it may just be a tier 1 deck, but I don't want to put it in there. It hurts my feelings too much to put it up there. It hurts my fragile ego to put it in tier 1. Alright, then we have Destiny Heroes. I put this on here because a lot of people were still playing it for some reason. I don't think it's very good. I think it's yeah, this is like, it's like a trap deck, but not a very good trap deck. I mean, I guess it's playable. Like, it's definitely on the same level as these guys, but yeah, it's not... I don't think you should be playing Destiny Hero currently. It's just not that great of a deck. It's just not that solid. It's a trap deck that's just worse than any other real sort of solid trap deck right now. So I'm going to put it down here. Alright, even the zombie variation doesn't really change much about it. It may even make it worse now that people are going to be teching for specifically graveyard decks like these guys. They might have like multiple DD crows in the format, which will make that will feel awful for this deck. So yeah, I'm not super keen on this one. Madolche. Ooh, that's a tier 3 deck. That's a rogue deck, I mean. Madolche is still surprisingly sneaking its way into tournaments. Obviously, you got its brand new Link monster. The new Link monster, it didn't really change much about the deck. It helped it a little bit. There were a couple of, like, cool things you can do. I made a video the other day which showcased, like, a new sort of way you can play it. But in general, if you're just playing it the standard way, it made it so that you got a new way to clear your field sometimes, but that was mostly all it was used for. So, if that's the case, the deck's probably just as good as it was before, and it was already a rogue level deck before. You'll probably see this in the next KC Cup. It missed getting a topping in this KC Cup because obviously the Tachyon bullshit, but normally it gets a top in every single KC Cup, so I reckon it'll be a rogue level deck list. Oh, okay, Cyber Synchron. Okay, this is an interesting one. So, I drastically underestimated how good this deck is. It had a result, so this is either tier 3 or rogue. It had a result in the last KC Cup. That was quite a high result, it was like top 100 somewhere. And in tournament play in general, it has had some decent results here and there. How many people actually took it to this one? Do we have anyone take it in here? Any Cyber players? We had 2. Evil was being played with it. And I think it's probably more of a rogue deck still. But I think it shares the same sort of issues as sort of what Kozmo does, where if there's a heavy amount of non-target removal being played, it makes it quite a bit worse. So, but it's definitely a better deck than Kozmo. It's way better than Kozmo. Because it also has like the attack lock and all the other bullshit on it as well. So, yeah, I think it's probably a rogue deck. I wouldn't put it much higher than that. But if it does sneak into tier 3, it wouldn't be a shock. It definitely wouldn't be a shock. I do expect to see this occasionally topping up in tournament results all over the place, so... Alright, Mayakashi. This one's not even a hard one. This is the best deck in the format. I don't think there's anything quite as close. I think a lot of people be playing Tenyi, but I think even then, I think Mayakashi is better than Tenyi. So I think Mayakashi is the best deck in the format. It seems to be having the most tops currently. It's just... Even before, like, when I did my ban list prediction... when I did my last tier list prediction, when the new Tachyon stuff was released, we all thought Tachyon would be tier 0. Then I thought Mayakashi would be the second best deck in the game. I was not aware of how bad that that matchup was going to be, where it just deleted Mayakashi from existence. But now that it's gone, I just think it's the best deck currently. It just seems to be the best. Even based on the just tournament results, it was doing super well. We had 5 in here. Based on the other tournaments, there were at least, I think, 4 or something in here. It just seemed like, yeah, it just seems like the best deck by a long shot. I really like this deck in the format. Probably with more people... When there's more people playing the deck list, I think a lot more counter cards and counter teching will happen towards it. So that might be enough to sort of stop it. But it's also a deck that can play through DD Crow, which is pretty impressive for it. So yeah, it might just be this deck is the sole best deck, but we'll have to wait and see what happens when people start teching towards it, if it sort of falls off a bit. I think for now, it's probably the best deck in the game. Yeah, I think Mayakashi's the best. Salad. Okay. Salad is always doing... I don't know. Salad might be a tier 3 deck. Salad is so interesting. I can't keep putting everything in Rogue, but Salad is so interesting. It's definitely better than anything down here. It's either Rogue or tier 3. It's at least high tier 3, if anything. Yeah, Salad just manages to sneak its way into doing well in events quite often, but it might not be good enough for tier 3. It might just fall short of it. It's very similar to Earth Machine, actually. These two, I'd say, are very similar. Yeah, I think it's something like this. I think this is correct. Yeah, I think Salad is... I think in the next KC Cup, you'll expect to see another Salad in top 100. There always is when there's no bullshit tier 0 Tachyons around, so... I don't know. This deck seems pretty good, but I'm not sure where exactly I'd put it. If someone wanted to put this in tier 3, I'd say go right ahead. I can understand it, but... Yeah, we'll put it in here for now. Alright, Constellar. Now that is a tier 3 deck. So Constellar completely fell off with the Tachyon stuff, but now that Tachyon's gone, it shoots itself back up into tier 3. It's one of the deck lists that can play as many tech cards as possible, and in a format where there's a lot of graveyard stuff, it becomes a lot easier to tech, where it's not... Because one of the issues with Tachyon is there wasn't any real good techs against it outside that stupid Gnomes card. So now that we're back in like a pure sort of graveyard format, it becomes a lot easier to play things like your DD Crows, your Skullmeisters, your IDPs, or whatever else. Actually, this can't play IDP, right? Or can it? I can't remember. But either way, you can play a bunch of hand traps in this deck that are focused on dealing with graveyard stuff, so... Yeah, it's definitely a tier 3 deck. I don't think it's quite tier 2. I think last time I reviewed this thing, I overestimated it a bit. But yeah, its turn 1 is definitely solid enough for tier 3. So yeah, it's going to sit in there for now. Alright, Trickstar. So I wanted to mention this deck because although it fell off, it only really fell off because it is a deck based around tech cards. And now that tech cards, once again, similar to Constellar, are going to be usable again, it's just going to be a really solid deck again in terms of just having tech cards to deal with the format. But it's probably a worse version of Constellar, and for that reason, it's just going to be a rogue deck. It's actually a much worse version of Constellar. It can't play as many tech cards. It still has the same sort of, a little bit of draw power, but it doesn't have the same sort of end fields where you have like actual disruption on the field itself. So yeah, it's probably gonna chill in rogue. I wouldn't be surprised if some people top some events with it, so we'll put it there for now. Crusadia, god, the rogue tier is really stacking up, I'm not gonna lie, because I don't want to put these in playable either. Actually, this one might only be a playable deck. Would I expect any Crusadias to reach top cards consistently or just occasionally? Probably not. I think unless there's someone's like real keen on this deck list, it's probably not going to get anywhere in particular. So it's probably just playable for now. There also isn't that many great sort of kaiju options. Like most of these decks don't care too much about getting kaiju'd. I guess Tenyi cares a bit, so maybe if Tenyi does become tier 1 and super popular, the kaiju sort of stuff becomes really annoying for it. But all these other decks just don't really care that much about getting kaiju'd. Because this one's disruption just comes from Grave, so it just does not care at all. I guess Shiranui cares a little bit. But even then, they can set up the Mayakashi and Graveyard too to special summon back, so... I don't know. I just don't think this is going to do too well in current format, but it's definitely still a playable deck. Live Twin, that's a solid tier 2. Yeah, I don't think Live Twin's like the definition of a tier 2 deck. It's never good enough to be tier 1, but it is actually a great format for it, because once again, tech cards become a lot more relevant. You can play DD Crows now, and it doesn't have some just dead tier 0 Tachyon matchup to deal with. It's just good into most of the best decks right now. Like, DD Crow's good against all of these late decks, all the top decks right now, so decks that can easily draw into their Crows are going to be a lot better off. So, yeah, I think this is a solid tier 2. I don't think I'd put it higher, because I still think these decks are probably better than it. But yeah, it's a solid tier 2. But it's probably the worst of the ones in tier 2 currently. Like, it's probably literally this order currently, I think. Alright, Rocket. Okay, Rocket is it's a playable one. I think in my point battle yesterday, someone did really well with Rocket, my point battle tournament I run. But it's I don't think it's that. I want to call it a good deck, but actually, we'll put it in Rogue. It's hard to put it lower than Rogue, because the deck is still does exactly the same as it's always done. It's just the format's become slightly stronger over time, where I think Rocket has fallen out, but it's still a solid deck. You're still just doing the same trap card bullshit with your Synchros, and maybe even having your Xyz on field that flips things face down, all that kind of bullshit, but it's probably just chilling in here with the rest of them. Yeah, it's probably just chilling here with the rest of them. Gearfried. So Gearfried I put on here as well because previous format before Tachyon, it was not another one of those deck lists that was slowly sneaking its way up in tournament results. People were actually really popular. Like, it was a really popular deck. People were enjoying it immensely. But I don't actually think it's a tier 3 deck list. I think on representation-wise, it's probably not going to be much higher than playable. I don't think many people are going to play this deck. But at the same time, it is close to these guys. It is real close. I'm going to put it over here for now, I think. But it is real close to being a rogue level deck, if not a tier 3 deck. It's real close. Maybe I should put it in there. Alright, we'll stick it in rogue for now. I might move that at the end, I'm not sure. Dark Magician, that is not good. So it turns out with Dark Magician, it's just the worst version of Blue Eyes. If you're going to play Dark Magician with a new skill, just play Blue Eyes instead. Because I don't think anyone's actually playing in these Battle Chronicles. It's like no one's playing Dark Magician, they're just playing the Blue Eyes side of it. So if you're going to play this new skill with Battle Chronicle, that kind of stuff, just play Blue Eyes. It's just going to be way better than this deck list currently. And since that's the best variation of the skill, it doesn't really make much sense to put it any higher. You can put it in playable if you like. It probably is technically a playable deck, but I don't think it's on the same level as these guys. I think it's just going to be a not too great right now. Altergeist. I think this deck is... It had one result. It had a result in the tier 0 format. It had a result in top 100. So I think I really have to give it at least the same level as the other deck that also had a top 100 result, tier 0 format. I don't think it's tier 3, because I think if we're talking trap decks, it's just worse than your S-Force. It's just typically worse than it. So I'm probably going to keep S-Force above it. But yeah, I think that's probably fair to it. It's just the worst version of S-Force in terms of trap decks. And it's definitely not bad, though. Like I said, it did have a top 100 result during the KC Cup, during that God Awful Tier 0 format, so it's definitely at least a rogue level deck, but I think I'm going to put Gearfried in playable. Yeah, okay. Alright, Blue Eyes. This deck... Oh, this deck. Blue Eyes has been doing interesting things recently. So Blue Eyes already, even during the Tier 0 format, it was a Tier 3 deck. Like, it actually snuck on based on tournament results. It had a decent matchup into sort of Tachyon. Well, decent. It was like a playable matchup into Tachyon. And now that Tachyon's gone, it still seems to be doing okay. Like, I think even in this one, it was the second most played deck. And had actually converted a couple of them at least. Still didn't convert that many, but it did convert more than Shiro at least, so... So I do think it's actually, like... It's probably tier 2, actually. It's either tier 2 or tier 3. If it's not tier 2, it's, like, high tier 3. Like, very close to tier 2. It feels weird putting it on the same tier as these guys, though. Like, it really does feel kind of weird. So I do think these decks are probably better than it. But it wouldn't be by much if it is. Is their spell card target? I'm just curious, has it got a good matchup into, Has it got a good matchup into Tenyi? Is this non-target removal? It only targets effects monsters, not even that great into Tenyi. Well, it's good into Tenyi going first, I guess. But going second, you can't distribute their monster sort of thing. And Tenyi's really good going second, so... Where do I want to put this? Maybe tier 2? If it's not tier 2, it's very high tier 3. So it's somewhere in between these two. I'm just not sure where in particular. It feels weird putting it in the same category as these guys. Like I said, I do think all of these are better than it. But it's probably better than these guys. So it's hard. It's real hard. Alright, Yubel. I don't think Yubel is very good. Yubel had a slight, very small uprising with a good super play targets with the with Tachyon being actually I think decent super play targets. I think it was. I think either way, it had like a slight uprising, but for that with Tachyon gone, I don't see a reason to play this. It has an awful matchup into Tenyi. It just seems like it has bad matchups all around currently. Like there is nothing in here I think it's good into. Yeah, I don't think Yubel's good anymore. I think Yubel's just dumb. Yubel's bad. I don't think it's good. I think I'd even prefer to play most of the decks in here than this one, so I'm going to put it in not good. Yeah, I don't think it's very great. Do we have any glue bells in this event? I actually had some Yubels in my tournament I ran yesterday, and they had a couple of conversions, I think. I didn't even see anyone playing it in here. If they are, I don't see them, so... Yeah, I don't think it's very good right now. Alright, Shaddoll. Shaddoll's probably rogue. Yeah, Shaddoll's probably rogue. It did have one person playing it in the KC Cup, but they were playing it along with something else, so I'm not sure that counts too much. Yeah, I think this deck is like another one of those very definition of rogue sort of decks. It's a deck that is good sometimes, and sometimes you see it top cut, but it's not doing too much right now. It's not like Winder is that much of a problem for most decks, and outside of that, just a really good sort of grind game, but nothing that's too exceptional, so I'm just going to put it in Rogue tier. It's definitely better than these guys, I think, but I wouldn't put it any higher. Oh god, okay, and here's the despair tier. I have to include the Evilswarm, because as part of the skill changes, Evilswarm did get a buff as well. It's just the buff didn't take this deck list that had no legs and no hands and give it limbs. It did absolutely nothing for it. It is like, hey, you can play some tech cards in your non-coherent strategy deck list. Cool. Don't play this deck. Do not play Evilswarm. It's dog shit. Do not touch it with a 20-foot pole. Galaxy-Eyes. This is a real interesting deck, because reading the skill, just staring at it, it looks like it should be a top tier deck. It is an insane skill. It's ridiculous advantage gain. But in practice, it just isn't actually a top tier deck. I don't think it is. It's probably just tier 3. Oh, sorry, Rogue, I mean. I wanted to be tier 3 so badly. I really want people to experiment more with it, because I think it's so close to a tier 3 deck list. The skill is too absurd for it to not be super high tier, but I don't know. Currently, it just isn't quite there. The Rogue tier really stacking up its decks. A lot of decks are currently playable right now, which is probably why Rogue is looking so fat. It's just none of them are quite as good as the stuff currently in here. Not quite as good. I think maybe at the end I might go through these and see if there's any that might slip into tier 3. Because it does kind of feel weird that I'm stacking up tier 3 so heavily, or Rogue so heavily. Alright, zombies. They are not good. Yeah, despite I think in my tournament results yesterday, my point battles, I think someone actually did get like 3rd place or something with it. I don't think it's that good. I've seen very little of it doing anything really. There are a bunch of zombie support that's rumored to be coming soon that might make this deck list a very good deck list. But until then, it just doesn't do anything right now. It's just not consistent enough, and all it really sets up is like, if you get really lucky, you get some good setups, but you have to get really lucky with your opening hands, which is the issue. It's not consistent enough in opening basically what you want. Alright, Ra. Okay, Ra. So Ra has had a topping in K. I think this deck once again is going to join the little collection of deck lists that had at least one result in the top 100. That makes it really like hard to put it any lower than Rogue. if you have a result top 100, like, you're doing something right, so it probably sneaks its way into here. It definitely sneaks its way into Rogue, at least. But again, it's not, no one's playing in tournaments, it's not really doing all that much, but if nobody's playing it, can I really put it any higher? Maybe I'll put it in playable. Yeah, I think maybe it's playable. I think one guy topping in the one guy topping in the KC Cup is probably not enough to put in Rogue tier, considering both these decks also have tournament results as well, whereas this one has like nothing. It has just that singular result from that one guy, and it was like KC Cup speed format, so outside of speed formats, maybe it isn't that great. Maybe we'll put it in playable. Evil Eye. I mean, the deck certainly feels playable, but nothing more than that. I'd almost consider putting it not good. I think Evil Eye is good when it's combined with BLS. Like, it's at least playable. But I think pure Evil Eye, it just doesn't feel that great. It's definitely a playable deck. Or not playable. It's definitely like a functional deck, let's say. It's functional. But I don't think it's currently good in the format. It just doesn't really... Yeah, I think if you combine it with BLS, you can have a much better time. We'll just say that. And if I think BLS is a better version of it, then it's probably going to be rated higher, so it makes sense to put it at least one tier lower. Red Eyes. So Red Eyes has had some results occasionally, very rarely, but I don't particularly think it's that great in the current format. It's definitely not a bad deck, though, so I think I'll put it in at least playable, but it's not doing anything too truly exceptional, and I don't expect it to be doing anything exceptional anytime soon. Alright, and Speedroid. Yeah, this deck fell off a cliff. Is it playable? I really don't think it's very good right now. I think Speedroid's pretty awful. Like, Speedroid's been doing nothing. Like, all of these decks in the playable tier are decks that I would say have the potential to very, very rarely, it'd be a bit of a surprise if they do, but very rarely, like, top cut in a tournament. Speedroid, I don't expect it to ever appear in a tournament result. I just never see this deck ever. I never see this deck ever. I'm actually curious, it's just in the last month or so, if there's any, like, 20 results or something. I know that's still during Tachyon format, but I'm just curious. Speedroid. It barely even has any, cog decks currently. Yeah, I think Speedroid is pretty awful. I'm gonna put it in not good. Alright, and that is it for my tier list. So do I want to change anything? And it's a fairly balanced bell curve, actually, so it sort of makes sense where I put everything. These bell curve-wise. Tier 3 is looking a little bit empty. So maybe some of these decks I can sneak into tier 3. Like, maybe these two make them push their way into tier 3, but I really think these decks are better than them. Which makes me not want to put them any higher. Altergeist, maybe, might be able to sneak its way up a tier, maybe. I think it's that order as I think for Rogue. But I don't know how I would, No, honestly, that feels right. I think that's right. I don't think these decks are just as good as these ones. I think these ones are certainly doing better. Yeah, I honestly think that's just about as accurate as I think the tier list will be. If any of these decks sneak their way into tier 3, that's fine, and I wouldn't be surprised if they do. Tier 3 and Rogue is always fairly close. Like, there's never that much of a difference between the two tiers, but I think in this sense, that's how I feel the format looks. So yeah, that's going to do it for today's tier list. Let me know down below if you disagree with anything, if you agree with anything. Yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Is there any decks I missed that you want me to rate? Feel free to leave them down below too, and I might respond to a few comments giving you a tier or where I think they're going to be if I missed any decks. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed. If you didn't, leave a like, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. Hope to see you in the next one. And yeah, this format's going to be a lot more fun than the previous one, so we'll leave it at that. Thank you guys for watching. Hope to see you in the next one. Laters.